For almost 30 years, CADCA has had a secret weapon. Many of you have heard the name, may have seen the small petite frame, but many of you have no idea of the work that's being done behind the scenes for this entire movement, all of the movement, to include viewing legislation, providing edits to the write-ups for legislation, working late nights and private meetings with champions and advocates, with members, with staff members in the House and the Senate, changing legislation, changing the language on bills. And for 30 years, almost 30 years, that person has been working behind the scenes. Certainly you see her on Capitol Hill Day. Certainly you hear her for the legislative updates in advance of that. But we've never stopped to honor our own Sue Thal. So Sue, it gives me great honor on behalf of the board and the staff of CADCA to award you this special Lifetime Advocacy Achievement Award for your dedicated and tireless service for almost 30 years. Thank you, Sue.
Welcome, everyone, to CADCA's National Leadership Forum Legislative Plenary. This afternoon, you will be briefed by one of our amazing congressional champions, Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick, about his priorities in the new Congress, as well as how you can best make your case on Capitol Hill for our field. You're also going to hear video remarks from a very impressive array of congressional leaders who have a long history of involvement with CADCA and our coalition movement. Finally, you're going to hear video remarks from this year's CADCA Congressional Leadership Award winners. So I'm really thrilled today to be joined by Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick, a Republican representing Pennsylvania's 1st Congressional District. Congressman Fitzpatrick is a member of the No Labels Problem Solver Caucus that truly believes in bipartisanship to address the issues facing our nation. Congressman Fitzpatrick has sponsored scores of legislation to advance the entire continuum of care for our field: prevention, intervention, treatment, recovery, support, and overdose reversal. He's signed on to the appropriations letter in support of the Drug-Free Communities program every single year since he was elected to Congress. So, Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time to participate with me today. I am such a big fan of your work. We're really excited that you're here. And just so you know, we have about 3,000 people who will be remotely listening to our conversation at our forum next week. So I know our forum participants are really interested in hearing about what your legislative priorities are for the first session of the 117th Congress regarding substance use issues generally, as well as what you think really needs to be done to tackle the opioid and stimulant crises facing our nation.
Yeah, thanks so much, Susan, and thanks for having me. And as you pointed out, I think, obviously, this is an issue of top priority importance, but you have to do more than just make it a priority. The approach you take is really important, which is why I am part of the No Labels Problem Solvers Caucus. I'm actually the vice chair of that, and I'm also the co-chair of the Bipartisan Opioid and Addiction Task Force with my friend and colleague Ann Custer from New Hampshire. So I've decided to lead the task force on this issue because it's of utmost importance. And I've also chose to be the co-leader of the, as far as the approach, the bipartisan task force in Congress. And I think that both are very important, because making the issue a priority and also taking a bipartisan approach, that's the only way you're going to get any kind of appreciable advancement and accomplishments in this area. So legislatively, certainly I'm going to continue to push for the IMD exemption in Medicaid to be lifted. As it currently stands, Medicaid will not cover treatment for substance use disorder. So I'll be reintroducing what we call the Road to Recovery Act and also the Restore Act, which would empower the DEA to better protect our communities from opioids. Additionally, I plan to reintroduce the Extend Act, which will extend the temporary scheduling of fentanyl analogs as a controlled substance, all of which I think are very, very important from a legislative standpoint.
Oh, well, we totally agree, and our members are in full support of all of those pieces of legislation. So we're excited to work with you to make those a reality. So the next question is, the COVID Relief Act that passed into law in late December included provisions and funding for substance use disorder issues due to COVID. We worked really hard to ensure that the Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment Block Grant was the vehicle for delivering that extra $1.65 billion in funding, as well as to ensure the inclusion of language that required the 20% prevention set aside would not be waived. What else do you think the new Congress can or should do to adequately address the dual epidemics of COVID and substance use disorder and overdose?
Yeah, we need to ensure that both the opioid and COVID crises are being addressed in any future relief package. And it's imperative that everyone is made aware of the devastating impact that COVID restrictions have had on the opioid epidemic. And we've all seen the metrics. There were some areas that we were seeing some improvement. A lot of that has regressed. In fact, all of them, to my knowledge, have regressed because we all know how brutally difficult the cycle of addiction is. And in order to really provide a pathway for people to get out of the throngs of addiction, first and foremost, they need a light at the end of the tunnel. They need to know that things are going to be better tomorrow than they are today so that they can work towards something. And that's been sort of the centerpiece of so much of what we try to do, both from a legislative standpoint, a policy standpoint, a funding standpoint, is try to provide that light at the end of the tunnel. But with COVID, between the quarantining and the shutdown of a lot of entities and businesses, some of which were treatment and recovery facilities, the job loss and the economic impacts, the loss of loved ones or the physical negative consequences of COVID, all of that puts a lot of stress and pressures on people, including people suffering from addiction, that can really set them back in their recovery. So I think that we have to address both simultaneously. So if there's COVID relief, that has to take into effect the broad ripple effect that COVID has caused, and first and foremost is those suffering from addiction.
Yeah, we 100% agree with that. I know that the $1.9 trillion proposal that President Biden has up on the Hill does include about $4 billion more for substance use and mental health issues through both HRSA and SAMHSA, but that hasn't been broken down yet. So I'm wondering if you have any more information on that, or if that's something you think would be widely supported, even though people are arguing about whether the package is too big or too small.
Yeah, that whole package is very much in flux right now as far as the contents and the breadth of it, and what's included and what's not. There's been some controversy over the idea, and it hasn't been confirmed yet or not as to whether the minimum wage will be made part of that, whether they will try to advance this through what they call budget reconciliation as opposed to a normal rule. So all of that is up in the air right now. All that I can hope for is that this is going to be a true bipartisan effort, because not only will it pass overwhelmingly if it is, but it's also going to be much more sustainable going forward, because anytime you have any kind of party line legislation, whether it be coming from the left or the right, that's not a product of legitimate bipartisan agreement and compromise, it's at risk of being repealed or scaled back, in the next 2-year election cycle. And that's not good for anybody. So that's why I hope that we do this right and get it right from the beginning.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more with that. So my next question is, I'd really love to know your thoughts about why, given the cost effectiveness and importance of substance use prevention to stop use before it starts, it just hasn't gotten the attention it deserves as far as being a priority for attention and funding in dealing with the opioid and stimulant epidemics, and what you think maybe can be done to more highly prioritize prevention in Congress.
Prevention is so important. It's one of the reasons why I've been a big believer myself going out to schools, getting into schools early, and making this part of the educational process, because that's a big factor. One of the genesises of substance use disorder is a stigma, and stigma is a polite way of saying prejudice and discrimination. We have to have open, honest, transparent conversations at a very young age as to what substance use disorder is, that it's a medical condition like many other medical conditions. It's not a moral failing, and let people know that, and also make it part of the curriculum. Not, addiction, mental health, all these things. We have a big focus in this country on physical health, as we should. It's very important, but we also have to have an equal focus on mental health, on focusing on things like addiction, and getting into schools early. And again, destigmatizing it is so important. It really is. We've all witnessed it. We've all seen the negative impact that stigma has on our effort to fight back against addiction, not just with opioids, but really any form of addiction. So education, particularly at the early stages, is so important, because the more open, honest, and transparent conversations we have with our children at a young age, the more likely they are to be open with adults or their friends about peer pressure or challenges they may be facing, or when they're in a tough spot in life, not going down the path of substances that can really damage and destroy their life. So I think that's perhaps the most important piece of this for the long term. If we're going to really get out of this spiral, is to make sure that the next generation coming up behind us, we're not playing catch up with them.
Yeah, well, we obviously, as a prevention organization, could not agree more. I guess I just asked, what would you suggest that our audience members, who are people like Debbie Moskowitz, who are coalition leaders in their communities, what can they do to get more congressional champions for actual substance abuse prevention? Within the whole continuum of care, but to try to move something upstream.
Yep. Well, Debbie's done a great job. We're very blessed in Bucks County, Montgomery County, to have great community advocates. And to their credit, they came to me early. When I first got sworn in 2017, just 4 years ago, they came to me, they introduced themselves, they educated me. I mean, I did come out of law enforcement as an FBI agent, but I saw that side of our battle against addiction on the law enforcement side. What I had not had significant or enough exposure to was the people that are suffering from substance use disorder. And I really got tremendous insight, and then getting to know people in recovery, getting to know them, hearing their stories, becoming friends with them, which I am now. They now know that they can come into my office anytime and generate their ideas when it comes to legislation, when it comes to new startup groups, and how we can help fund them. Because really, if it's an all hands on deck situation and it becomes a community effort, it's much more likely to be successful. But as far as my advice on how to get more members of Congress on board, and by the way, this isn't limited to the federal level. We need to get our state legislators and state senators, our local township supervisors. If we can get everybody on board to make this a priority, this battle needs to be fought on multiple different levels. And we really need to take a 360-degree approach to addiction to make sure that we're not just addressing one area and not another, because that's not going to get the job done. But to have good community-based organizations with good human beings and good people that care tremendously about the issue, to make the introduction to their legislator, to make the introduction to their legislator staff. And if those members of the staff and those legislators are doing their job, they're going to want to meet with these people. They're going to want to learn from them, and they're going to want to incorporate that in how they're representing the districts. Addiction is a problem nationwide. We've seen the numbers worse in some areas than others. Certainly, it's been terribly plaguing for us here in Pennsylvania. One of the reasons why, I chose in allocating the amount of time that I have on the Hill towards this issue. You can't be the leader of every single task force in Congress. You have to pick and choose which ones you're going to make a priority. This was a priority that I chose. And that is in large part, and everybody should know this, because of the community-based organizations that we have, people like Debbie and people like Diane Rosati in Bucks County, drug and alcohol, in the county government, in the courthouse in Doylestown, and so many other organizations. It's just the Caitlin Murphy Foundation. I could go on and on. David's New Day. So many amazing organizations that I've gotten to know the people. They've shared the pain of their loss that they felt, and you feel that. You struggle with them, and you want to help them find that light at the end of the tunnel. Not only for them to help them get through it, but also people that are still battling through addiction to help them get through it.
Well, that's music to our ears because our whole thing is data-driven, comprehensive, community-wide approaches that involve all the sectors working together to really do everything across the continuum of care from prevention through recovery support. So thank you for that answer. So just moving on a little, last year, as you know, Tobacco 21 legislation became federal law and the Trump administration enacted limited flavor bans. What do you believe needs to be done to protect young people from kid-friendly flavors like gummy bears, cotton candies, s'mores, and also from menthol, which is, you know, basically one of the flavors that gets minority populations hooked more than anything else?
Yeah, it's a huge problem, Susan. You know, the health and safety of our children is paramount, and the number of young people using e-cigarettes and these other products is alarming. There's no question about it. I was part of a seminar at New Hope Solebury High School, to their credit, and many other high schools as well in Bucks County have really taken the lead on this because they see it happening in their own schools. You know, legislatively, I voted to ban flavored tobacco products, including the kid-friendly or highly used amongst the youth menthol-flavored vaping products. You know, but on a local level, as a community, we need to raise awareness. We need to come together and educate our youth and arm them with the knowledge and assistance required to prevent them from going down this path of forming a habit of vaping, to give them the tools they need to quit with the support of friends, family, and trusted adults, and ultimately to eliminate their access to these substances altogether. It is so dangerous when these addictive substances are now in the form of gummy bears. That's a problem. And it's a problem from the teachers and school administrators standpoint as well, because, you know, with cigarettes, it was pretty obvious if kids are smoking cigarettes. It's kind of hard to get away with that. With these e-cigarettes and these vaping, it's very hard to detect. Sometimes and you've seen it, they can be disguised in what appears to be a thumb drive and all sorts of devices. There's no smoke. So this sometimes is occurring inside classrooms as teachers' backs are turned to the classroom while they're writing on the chalkboard. This is a huge problem. You can't detect them when they're being used in the bathrooms. And by the way, they're way more dangerous than cigarettes. As bad as cigarettes are, which are tremendously harmful, these are even more harmful. Exponentially more nicotine, more harmful corrosive effects to the lungs than cigarettes are. And they're being done covertly without being detected. It is so hard being a kid today. It really has. It really is. And you know, with all the stresses that are placed on kids, with you know, high performance standards and high expectations, and then you throw on top of that social media, where cyberbullying is unfortunately at an all-time high, and then you couple that with them having access to these incredibly dangerous products. It's just an awful combination. And we really need to protect our kids, to give them, you know, a chance, the same chance we all had growing up, that once you get through your education, that you're not suffering from decisions that you made as a kid that, you know, could have been avoided. So I think it's incredibly important that we address it head on.
No, I couldn't agree more. And you did mention the gummy bears, which basically have tremendous amounts of THC in them. And there's all kinds of cookies and other things that are being brought to schools, and
Yeah.
kids are getting poisoned, ending up in emergency rooms. So I just would ask, in addition, you know, obviously no one thinks it's a good idea for kids to have access to any marijuana products, but what you think about these really high potency marijuana products that are also being vaped in things like Juuls, which are up to like 99.9% THC.
Incredibly dangerous. You know, and the marijuana debate is a whole nother subject. I mean, you know, medicinal is one thing for, you know, cancer patients and the like. But once we start getting into recreational use, we have to proceed with caution. I always like to follow the data and the science and everything. The two largest lobbying groups, if you will, who urged me against allowing for the recreational legalization, which was also voted on a month or so back. I've been hearing a lot from the medical community who are concerned about not enough data on the long-term negative health consequences of these products. And second is a law enforcement community In many cases, they don't have the same ability to detect, say, marijuana usage and test it, for example, on the road, than they do alcohol, for example. And that's a problem because then you make your roads less safe. So we really need to study the data and the science and the evidence, proceed with caution, and we all should want the same things. We all want a community that's safe. We all want to eliminate addiction forever. That should be the goal. And we got to do everything we can to advance that. And a lot of these products that are coming to light now are just feeding into the problem rather than trying to address it and nip it in the bud.
Well, thank you for that answer. I think if we were in person, you'd have 3,000 people on their feet clapping, because we totally agree with everything that you just said. So thank you for your leadership on that. We really appreciate it. So you sort of answered this before with how, engaged you are personally with the nonprofits and the community organizations in your district. But I guess how much power do you think your constituents have on your authorization and appropriations priorities? And what advice would you give to other members of the audience who maybe aren't as close to their congressmen or state legislators or city and county government people as you are to yours, to get our issues to be priorities at all these levels of government?
Yeah, it's become more challenging in DC because, when we normally would be taking a lot of meetings with constituent advocacy groups, the Capitol is essentially shut down due to COVID, has been for quite some time. However, district offices, mostly, and ours is one example, but I believe most district offices around the country remain open for limited, socially distant meetings. And if a representative is doing his or her job, they're going to take that meeting, particularly of constituents, particularly of groups that are organized of constituents who are rallying around a single and very, very important issue. So I'm happy to help facilitate if any of the members of the group or your audience are having a hard time connecting with your representative. That's a service I can provide as the co-chair of the National Opioid and Addiction Task Force. If you're looking to get the ear of your legislator or their staff and you can't, just let me know. Let us know, let our advocates know, because part of our fight is not just to fix the problem here in Bucks County, excuse me, but it's also to solve this problem nationwide. We need an all hands on deck situation, and the more advocacy that gets done with my colleagues, the easier it is for me to get them to co-sponsor legislation that our task force is advancing.
Oh, well, great answer, and thank you for that offer. You might hear some people taking you up on that. My next question is, and you spoke to this a little before about how impactful people's stories are about recovery, et cetera. But what data, information, and stories do you think tend to resonate best with members of Congress to get their support for our whole continuum of care, from prevention through recovery support?
Yeah, I would say sources of data, such as those from the Department of Health and Human Services, are going to be the most useful in raising awareness and gaining support. And share your personal stories and encourage others to support you and to join you in taking action.
And how about youth voices? We have a lot of really amazing youth advocates. How important do you think it is for members to actually hear from youth firsthand about what they're facing and seeing in their communities, sort of across the board with substance use issues?
Yeah, I will tell you, Susan, no matter what the issue, the youth are the most powerful advocates, always. The younger, the better, believe me, because it's inspiring for us. It reminds us that the decisions we're making are going to have far more of an impact on them and their lives than it will on us adults. And no matter what the issue, and I could run you down a list of a ton of initiatives that I've worked on, where I've had young people come to me, and I've actually utilized them and brought them to my colleagues in Congress and got them to lobby them as well. If you can't listen to the voice of a child, then there's something wrong with you. I love the youth being involved, and moreover, it also is important on another level. It makes them very active in their democracy and their government, and that's important because we need people engaged in the government. A lot of the decisions that are made when it comes to legislation, when it comes to policy, are driven out of both the state capitals and the U.S. Capitol. And not only is it good to make them feel that their voice matters and they can actually affect change, which will benefit them in a whole host of ways in their life, but they'll also be making a positive impact on this issue as well, because we need the young people to talk to other young people that might be at risk of going down the path of addiction.
Well, thank you. We have a lot of young people that attend this conference, and they're going to be thrilled to hear that answer. And then my last question is just, and you sort of hit on this, in the age of COVID, when the Capitol is shut down, what is it that you recommend constituents do to stay connected with their members of Congress and stay involved in the legislative process, given this year we would have had 1,100 people on the Hill. We're doing everything through WebEx and trying to connect people that way. But what do you suggest people do?
Yeah, I mean, virtual meetings are very effective. I mean, there's always a downside to not having in-person meetings because you don't have that human-to-human contact and that connection and engagement. However, if there's an upside of virtual meetings, members are much more accessible and easy to get now because they can do them from their home, they can do it from the road, they can do it in their office. So technically, I mean, I'm exhibit A of that. I'm on Zoom morning, noon, and night on a whole host of issues, which is good. I've actually been able to reach more people on a wider breadth of issues than I previously could have. So that's the silver lining there. And they allow their representatives and their constituents to safely communicate, you know, on all these issues. And that's what I would encourage you to do. Reach out to your local representative. Again, I'm here as a resource that can help you connect if you're having trouble. I'll reach out to the member directly, my colleague, Democrat or Republican. I'm friends with all of them. I have personal relationships with all of them because you need those relationships to advance the cause. And this is another example of that. So if anybody's having trouble, you know, you can reach out to me and my staff and just say, hey, I heard Brian speak on this this forum. I'm having a hard time connecting. Can you help? And we're happy to do that for you.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us, providing your insights, and just for all of your advocacy and efforts to support our entire field. You're one of our biggest champions. We truly appreciate everything, and I'm really honored that you were able to join us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Susan. I appreciate it.
It's my honor to introduce video remarks from Senator Rob Portman from Ohio. Most of you know Senator Portman has been one of CADGA's strongest champions over more than 2 decades. As a congressman, Senator Portman was the main congressional architect of the Drug-Free Communities Act that established the Drug-Free Communities program. He was also the original force behind the establishment of the Coalition for a Drug-Free Greater Cincinnati. With Senators Capito, Shaheen, and Whitehouse, Senator Portman just introduced the Drug-Free Communities Pandemic Relief Act, which will waive matching requirements for drug-free communities grantees if they are unable to raise that match due to COVID-19. For his consistent support of CADGA, our coalitions in substance use prevention, Senator Portman received CADGA's highest honor, the National Leadership Award, in 2008.
General Dean, this is your friend Rob Portman. I want to join everyone else in congratulating you on a well-earned retirement after 23 years heading up CADGA. Amazingly, this marks the end of a second career you've excelled in. After 31 years of defending our nation as an officer in the United States Army, you set your sights on keeping us safe in another important way, combating the addiction epidemic that has sadly taken so many lives and devastated so many communities. I was there with you at the start of your leadership of CADGA, and I'm honored to be part of this ceremony today, thanking you for that great leadership. Under your leadership, CADGA has grown into a world-class organization that is now the leading nonprofit focused on fighting addiction in the United States, focusing on prevention. It's been a source of guidance and support for countless anti-drug coalitions across the country to keep our community safe, including our coalition I founded in Greater Cincinnati. And your work is part of the reason I believe we are now closer than ever to helping to turn the tide in terms of the prevention side of this addiction crisis we face. I've been proud to partner with you over the years in that effort, including working with CADCA to implement the landmark Drug-Free Communities Act that has provided critical grant funding to drug-free community coalitions across the country for over 20 years now. Thanks to its successes and your advocacy, the Drug-Free Community Act is now funded at 10 times its original funding level, and we'll continue to advocate for increased spending on these important programs. General Dean, you've been a driving force in the fight against addiction in the United States, and we've made so much progress in that fight because of you. Thank you for what you've done. We've got a lot more to do, but I know you're going to continue to be involved in other ways, and I look forward to continuing to stay in touch. Best of luck and Godspeed, my friend.
It's now with great pleasure that I get to introduce our next video from Representative Karen Bass, who represents California's 37th District. Congresswoman Bass is truly one of us. In 1990, she helped found a really successful community coalition in South Central Los Angeles. From 1999 to 2003, Congresswoman Bass served on CADCA's Coalition Advisory Council when she was still a coalition leader. In 2011, Karen was elected to Congress, and in 2018, she was elected to be the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. Congresswoman Bass was a 2012 recipient of CADCA's Congressional Leadership Award for her amazing support of our field.
Hello, everyone. Let me thank my good friend Sue Thaw for that kind introduction. It has been so many years that we have been at it with the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America. I first became involved at the end of the 1980s and formed one of the anti-drug coalitions, and shortly after met Sue Thaw and General Arthur Dean. You have been such an amazing leader for the organization through so many hills and valleys. And I can't believe that it's time for you to move on now, really in a time when drug-free communities are needed more than ever. So I just want to thank you for all of your years of service. Thank you for hanging in there and really building the organization into a force to be contended with. And know, even after your service, I'm sure you will continue to serve our country because your entire life has been dedicated to that. And hopefully we'll see you in Washington, D.C. Maybe you'll come back, as I have, and be a speaker at the Community Anti-Drug Coalition of America's annual conference. Thank you so much for including me, and thank you, General Dean.
It's now my pleasure to introduce the video remarks from Senator Dianne Feinstein from the great state of California. Senator Feinstein is a longstanding champion for our field. She's a co-chair of the Senate Drug Caucus and has been the Democratic Senate lead on appropriations in support of fully funding the Drug-Free Communities program since 2019. Last year, she partnered with Senator John Cornyn from Texas to designate October 2020 as National Substance Abuse Prevention Month. Senator Feinstein received CADCA's Congressional Leadership Award in 2011 and continues to be a true champion for CADCA, our coalitions, and substance use prevention.
I just want to say hello, and I'm sorry I can't be there, but I want to say thank you. You are, in a sense, doing the Lord's work because we know teens and we know drugs and we know they don't interface, and when they do, there's big trouble. So I just want to say thank you for everything that this organization is doing to quell the use of narcotics, and I will support you wherever I can. So thank you very much.
It's my honor to introduce the video remarks from Senator Shelley Moore Capito from the great state of West Virginia. Senator Capito knows the devastating effects that the opioid and meth epidemics have had on her state and has worked tirelessly to address them. She has worked in a bipartisan manner to help West Virginia secure very needed additional federal funding for substance use prevention, treatment, and recovery. Senator Capito won CADCA's Congressional Leadership Award in 2018.
Well, hi everyone. Thank you for all the work that you do keeping our communities safe and healthy. I sure miss having you here in Washington, where we've had so many meetings and getting to see your progress and meeting your students. So best to everybody out there in virtual land. It would be better if we were face to face, but no less passion on your part or mine. This past year has been very stressful for everyone, and we see that reflected in the drug and alcohol abuse numbers that are across the country. The most recent COVID relief package ensured funding was set aside specifically to continue our battle against substance abuse. Most notably was the record level of funding that the Drug-Free Communities program, as well as the assurance that the program will remain within the White House ONDCP. Before the pandemic bill, we were really making significant strides in finding what's effective for communities, and a lot of that is because of the work that you do. Effective strategies like Drug-Free Communities programs employ an all-hands-on-deck approach and is a reliable system that delivers results. It also gives communities the flexibilities they need to meet their most urgent challenges. I've witnessed the successes of the program and talked with many of you firsthand when visiting your towns across West Virginia. And as you will recall, we had the head of ONDCP, Jim Carroll, to meet several of you as well in West Virginia. As the COVID vaccines continue to be distributed, I'm hopeful we can get back to making more progress very soon. In the meantime, I want you to know I remain fully committed to this fight with you. I've seen the difference that you're making in communities throughout West Virginia and so many other states. You're helping to bring us closer to a safer, healthier, drug-free nation. I look forward to helping to work to achieve this goal any way that I can. Again, thank you for all the work that you have done and will do, and have a great forum.
I'm now really honored to introduce the video remarks of Senator Joe Manchin from the great state of West Virginia. As a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Senator Manchin works to ensure that substance use prevention programs such as the Drug-Free Communities program are funded at the highest possible levels during the annual appropriations process. Senator Manchin has been a prominent guest at CADCA events, speaking at our Capitol Hill Day rally last year and winning our Congressional Leadership Award in 2018.
Hello, I'm United States Senator Joe Manchin. Thank you all for joining the virtual 31st CADCA National Leadership Forum, and a special thank you to the West Virginians who are representing our wild and wonderful state at the forum. This year, the American people have faced not one, but two healthcare crises. The COVID-19 pandemic that has taken over 370,000 Americans from us, and the drug epidemic that has taken an estimated 81,000 Americans in 2020, the highest number ever, far surpassing estimates for last year. We must work together to address these crises and help our fellow Americans, neighbors, family, and friends in need during this incredibly difficult time. We know that the COVID-19 pandemic has only accelerated overdose deaths. Since 1999, nearly 800,000 people died in the United States from drug overdoses, primarily related to prescription opiates. On average, 221 Americans die every day from an opiate overdose. And this epidemic doesn't just destroy families and communities, it's harming our economy. According to the White House Council of Economic Advisors, misuse and abuse of prescription drugs cost the country about $540 billion in 2015. This includes lost productivity, medical costs, criminal justice costs, and the loss of human lives. We have a responsibility, all of us, to step up and do everything that we can to combat this epidemic. And we must tackle this problem from every angle: family assistance, counseling programs, consumer and medical education, law enforcement support, state and federal legislation, everything. That's why I led the way to ensure that the formula for opioid crisis specific funding included metrics that help states that need it the most. This funding is critically needed, and because of that formula, it is now being directed to the states with the highest death rates and the greatest needs, like West Virginia. Additionally, I have worked to improve access to mental health treatment through my crisis care improvement and suicide prevention legislation, which passed last month. This ensured additional funds to crisis care programs and mobile crisis units to respond to people experiencing a mental health or substance use-related crisis. I also supported increased access to telehealth, including audio-only telehealth, for patients in areas without access to broadband services. This allows patients to receive mental health care even without being able to visit their doctor's office. As a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee, I promise to continue fighting to allocate funds to combat the opioid epidemic, not only in West Virginia, but all across America. Thank you and God bless.
It's now with great pleasure that I introduce the video remarks from Senator John Cornyn from the great state of Texas. Senator Cornyn has been an advocate for those dealing with substance use issues throughout his entire time in the Senate. He co-sponsored the Substance Abuse Prevention Act, which was signed into law as part of the Opioid Crisis Response Act of 2018. Senator Cornyn is a co-chair with Senator Feinstein of the Senate Drug Caucus and a 2019 recipient of CATCA's Congressional Leadership Award.
Hi, I'm Texas Senator John Cornyn. I want to wish you all a warm welcome to CATCA's virtual National Leadership Forum. As a longtime advocate for those dealing with substance abuse issues, I've made it a priority to champion this cause during my time in the Senate. That's why I introduced the Substance Abuse Prevention Act, and I'm proud to say it has been signed into law. While that's a good first step, we still have work to do, and your advocacy is making a difference. So keep up the good work and stay safe out there.
And now I'm really excited to introduce the video remarks of Representative Raja Krishnamurthy from Illinois' 8th Congressional District. Congressman Krishnamurthy is committed to substance use prevention. In 2019, he helped launch the Congressional Caucus to end the youth vaping epidemic. During the Trump administration, he urged the president to implement a comprehensive flavor ban on all e-cigarettes. Last year, CATCA was honored to have Congressman Krishnamurthy as a speaker at our Capitol Hill Day rally.
Good afternoon. Thank you to Alex Mahoney and CATCA for the invitation to join you for your National Leadership Forum and virtual Capitol Hill Day. CATCA has been a formidable force in the fight for substance use prevention. Through your innovative Drug-Free Kids campaign, your efforts to raise awareness around National Recovery Month and National Medicine Abuse Awareness Month, and your advocacy in support of legislation like the Stop and Support Acts, you have clearly established yourselves as the organization that is really an inspiration in the nonprofit and substance use prevention world. I'd also like to take a moment to give a shout out to Arthur T. Dean for his dedication and leadership as CEO of CATCA, and to share my sincerest congratulations and welcome to Barry L. Price, who will be taking over for General Dean following his retirement. Congratulations to you both. As a longtime advocate for substance use prevention, especially as it pertains to vaping and tobacco use among young people, I am deeply committed to working to stop the spread of harmful drugs. As I've often said, this issue is deeply personal to me, as I am a father to both a middle school and a high school student. My eldest son, Vijay, told me he was approached almost 20 times during his first 3 weeks in high school by kids asking if he wanted to vape. As you know, one of the elements of vaping that is so appealing to kids is the availability of flavored vapes, which is why I have more recently focused my efforts on limiting the flavored vaping products that are available to our kids. Last month, I wrote to Juul Labs demanding withdrawal of its pre-market tobacco product application. It's PMTA for menthol flavored products. This would essentially compel Juul to commit to not selling menthol flavored e-cigarettes because they are very attractive to kids, especially those who are looking for an alternative since Juul stopped selling the mint flavor some time ago. On this and other efforts, I look forward to continuing to work with CADCA and other advocates to end the youth vaping epidemic. Thank you so much for gathering, and God bless.
The substance use prevention field has always had really strong supporters in Congress. Today, I am honored to present CADCA's Congressional Leadership Award to 5 of our congressional champions who have gone over and above in supporting legislation critical to our field. This year's CADCA Congressional Leadership Award winners are Senator Chuck Schumer, now Majority Leader of the Senate from New York, Congressman David Trone from Maryland, Congressman Ted Budd from North Carolina, Senator Pat Toomey from Pennsylvania, and former Congressman Harley Rauda from California. Senator Toomey and former Congressman Rauda's offices both thanked CADCA profusely for their members winning this prestigious award, but they were unable to provide video remarks for you today. So our first award winner is Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, the current Senate Majority Leader. Senator Schumer is winning the CADCA Congressional Leadership Award for his unwavering commitment to ensure that substance use prevention, treatment, recovery support, and research are all high legislative priorities for him. In addition, as busy as he is, Senator Schumer always made time every single year to personally meet with our over 100 forum attendees on Capitol Hill Day. He has actually never missed a Capitol Hill Day meeting with his constituents, our wonderful New York coalition leaders.
Hello, CADCA, the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America. This is Senator Chuck Schumer, and I hope all of you have been healthy and safe during the first few weeks of the new year. And I want to thank you all so much for the recognition of this year's Congressional Leadership Award. This is an immense honor. Few things are as personal to me as the fight against substance abuse. I have seen countless families in New York struggle against addiction. But our state is lucky to have so many incredible organizations leading the fight against addiction, and I want to recognize you all today. 2020 was an especially hard year in the fight against substance abuse. But thank you for adapting to the challenges of the pandemic and persevering in your mission to serve those who struggle with addiction. I promise to stand with you every day that I'm in Washington. For years, I've been proud to secure billions in the fight against addiction, including opioids, which has hurt my home state so badly. In the most recent COVID deal, I'm proud we were able to include over $4 billion in SAMHSA funding to help combat mental health and substance abuse use disorders. But that's not all. I will fight every day to make sure we preserve Drug-Free Communities program funding in the new year. The funding's made a world of difference in New York. Over 200 grantees receiving $130 million in grant money since 1998. These are federal dollars that have saved lives, and we must keep it going in the years ahead. It's going to take all of us working together to get past the struggles of this last year. But it's organizations like CADCA that give me hope. Organizations who understand teamwork, diversity, and the need to bring everyone to the table to make our world a better place. That is the spirit that will lift our country out of these dark times. So to all of you, thank you from the bottom of my heart for the incredible work you do every day.
Our next award goes to Congressman David Trone of Maryland's 6th Congressional District. Congressman Trone is winning the CADCA Congressional Leadership Award for his organization and leadership of the House Freshman Working Group on Addiction. This group held multiple briefings from experts in our field, including inviting Katka to speak to the group. In addition, Congressman Trone is being recognized with this award for co-sponsoring multiple pieces of legislation to deal with the addiction crises affecting our nation, many of which have already become law.
Hi, I'm Congressman David Trone from Maryland's 6th District. I'd like to thank the Community Anti-Drug Coalition of America for their commitment for creating drug-free environments, not only in the U.S., but around the world. This work couldn't be more important, and I'm deeply honored to receive the Congressional Leadership Award. Unfortunately, we've seen massive upticks in substance use over the past few years, only made worse by COVID-19 pandemic. New data from the CDC and prevention shows that from June 19 to May of 20, there are more than 81,000 drug overdose deaths in the United States, the highest number we've ever had in a 12-month period. We've also seen a rapid increase in drug use and alcohol consumption throughout the pandemic. It's absolutely heartbreaking. No family, no person should ever have to deal with the loss of a loved one at the hands of substance use. That's why we need to act, and act now. During the 117th Congress, I will continue to fight tirelessly, relentlessly, to help those who are the most vulnerable. That means working on measures not only to assist those that are currently battling addiction, but measures to prevent addiction in the first place. Thank you again for this distinguished honor. I look forward to continuing to work together to make our country, our world, healthier and safer. Take care, thank you, and be safe.
Now it's my honor to present Congressman Ted Budd of North Carolina's 13th Congressional District with his Congressional Leadership Award. Congressman Budd is winning the Katka Congressional Leadership Award for co-sponsoring the Drug-Free Communities Pandemic Relief Act, which would allow the Office of National Drug Control Policy to waive matching requirements for drug-free communities grantees who cannot raise the match that's required due to issues related to COVID-19.
Hi everyone, Congressman Ted Budd here. Today I'm proud to accept the Congressional Leadership Award from the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America. Substance abuse has wreaked havoc on thousands of people, damaged families, and devastated communities across the country. Fortunately, there are community coalitions funded by the Drug-Free Community Support Program, which, by virtue of their comprehensive multi-sector approach to solving and addressing local drug issues, are now taking on an increased role in the COVID-19 pandemic. These coalitions are uniquely able to deal with the emerging drug trends, including those posed by the pandemic, because they create data-driven, coordinated local responses to them. And that's why last year, I was proud to have introduced the bipartisan Drug-Free Communities Pandemic Relief Act. This bill would help reduce substance abuse among our youth by giving the Office of National Drug Control Policy the authority to waive the match requirements of the Drug-Free Community Support Program if the grantee is unable to meet these requirements due to the pandemic. One of the programs is operating in Rowan County, North Carolina, and I want to help them get as much money as they need to help as many people as we can. Now, sadly, the cost of substance abuse can be measured in lost dreams and lost potential, in the financial and labor burdens on the first responders, healthcare providers, and human service organizations, and ultimately in the tragic loss of human life. So I'm proud to support initiatives that help the heroes in our community who fight substance abuse every day. Thanks again for this award, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of the forum.
Senator Pat Toomey, who couldn't send in a video of Pennsylvania, is winning CADCA's Congressional Leadership Award for his efforts to ensure that both supply and demand reduction approaches to dealing with our nation's substance use epidemic are being adequately addressed in the Senate through new legislation. And finally, former Congressman Harley Rauda, who lost his reelection bid to represent California's 48th Congressional District, won a Congressional Leadership Award for his co-sponsorship with Congressman Budd of the Drug-Free Communities Pandemic Relief Act. Congratulations to all of CADCA's Congressional Leadership Award winners. All of them are true champions for our field, and it's with great pleasure that these awards were given. We look forward to working with all of these members in the coming year to continue to ensure that the legislation and funding needed for the entire continuum of care for our field, with an emphasis on substance use prevention generally and community coalitions specifically, remains a major priority for this new Congress. This brings us to an end of our legislative plenary. I hope this session has been enlightening in showcasing the breadth and depth of the bipartisan and bicameral support for your work on Capitol Hill, as well as the important role each of you have in making your voices heard and in building and maintaining relationships with your congressional delegations. As you know, that is how we have always gotten new congressional champions for CADCA and the field. Thank you to all the members who took time to participate today, as well as to all of you for your time and attention in attending this first ever virtual legislative plenary. Thanks.